same item, simply so that I could just do roll call once and not back to back.
Okay, I heard I can call the meeting to order, and then I saw your lips continue to move, and I didn't hear anything, and then, well, calling roll one time. So, one more time? Sorry.
No, that's my connection. Please, I did merge the approval of agenda and meeting minutes into one action item.
Okay.
So I would only have to do roll call once.
Oh, got it. Okay, sounds good. Okay, I would like to call our July 27th meeting to order. Hopefully everybody got a chance to look over the agenda and the meeting minutes. Are there any comments on those?
Commissioner Weaver, this is Commissioner Panta. I move to accept both as published.
All right, we have a motion to accept as published. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Bueller, I would second that.
Okay, and then Vanessa, I believe you're going to do roll call? Or...
I am.
Yep.
Commissioner Weaver?
Aye.
Commissioner Shea? Guess I could just say Kevin. Okay, I'll come back. Commissioner Castelia?
Aye.
Commissioner Veerling? I'll come back. Commissioner Perkins?
Aye.
Commissioner Schmidt? Okay. I'm going to go back to Commissioner Shea. You'll have to unmute yourself.
Trying it again. Did you mute me?
Yeah, Ryan muted everybody at the beginning, so go ahead and unmute yourself. Thank you.
Well, I have twice now, so I've never had a problem with the phone being muted before with someone else controlling it.
Yeah, their connection's not so great this time around. I'm not sure why. I apologize.
Well, if you can hear me now, I said aye.
Yep, thank you. Commissioner Veerling?
Aye, present.
Thank you. And Commissioner Schmidt?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, so the motion passed, and we can move on to staff reports. It looks like Troy, you're up first.
Hi, everyone. I'm just going to go ahead here and just cover some highlights. Let's see here. Okay, you're there. So I just want to point everybody's attention first to the first chart there you see under technical assistance and cost share requests. We kind of share this every month, kind of keep an update on what our numbers are for the last 13 months. And you will see, despite the pandemic and everything we've been through, our number of service requests is the highest it's been in over a year, and probably one of the highest it's been all time. I think we got close to 300 when we had the 2014 flood damage, but otherwise, just reporting that in July we had almost 270 requests for conservation assistance that are active, and over 150 are at various stages of project development. Now that's in all of Scott County, but you can see the blue represents WMO, which is the lion's share of all the work we're doing is within the WMO. So our staff are really stretched thin. We have staff with as many as 50 service requests at one time they're working on. Some are with 30, but have, many of those are projects. So we're stretched thin, but we like it. We like to be busy, and we like to know that despite all the crazy things going on, that the interest in conservation and proceeding with projects is strong. So we have yet to see if there's going to be any or drawdown of that, if the trend continues, or an impact from this. But for now, we're just trudging through those things. If you could go back to the other page there, just want to point out under the Clean Water Education Program that one of the things we've launched into is, like everybody, is doing webinars in place of live workshops. We did a rain garden one earlier this year, and then we did one on June 9th for Stabilize Your Shoreline webinar. And we're planning, there was just last week, we had a Plant Native Prairie webinar. And I would say that the amount of interest we had and participation in these webinars is as high as we've had in person. So it appears that we've touched on something that's actually a product that people would avail themselves to, perhaps even more than if they were in person, just because of the convenience. We haven't figured it out the full reason, but we've had really good participation and a lot of good discussion on the webinar material. So I'm happy to report that that's kind of been a successful, maybe a bright spot in all this, is just the participation and interest we've had, as well as just basically being able to have some expertise and knowledge on how to provide content through a different venue, which I think, whether we get things back to normal or not, will prove beneficial. Last thing on this page I'll cover, just point you to the inventory and assessment. As you know from last reporting over the last couple of months, we've been working on the Thole Lake Sub-Watershed. It's not a huge watershed. It's got a pretty good chunk of ag contributing area, as well as some rural, residential development. But we're kind of coming in and bringing that one to a landing. We've done all the modeling, we've done all the inventory stuff, and we've ranked all the best management practices. So Vanessa, you can expect to get a draft report pretty soon on that, and then when we finalize it, then distribute it to the Planning Commission as you see fit. But once that one's rounded out, then we'll head on to Roberts Creek, which is the next one on deck. All right, page 2, Ryan. Monitoring. So I don't know if Vanessa's going to share more about this later, or if she has in the past, but we began the Pika Creek monitoring. We have continuous water level loggers out there and conduct bi-weekly sampling. Those are sample collections that we then take to the lab, as well as flow measurements. We did a round of groundwater observation well monitoring as well, but we do 4 to 6 of those a year. Those are wells dispersed around the county that we report back to the DNR on water levels, and we can monitor long-term trends using that information. So they had sort of halted that for the pandemic, but they recently said it's okay to go out there, so we did our first round actually on the wells. With that, I think in the interest of time and just comfort level, I'll wrap it up and just say that on the last page, that table there shows, one more, Ryan, shows the activity we had with the technical assistance and cost share program specific to WMO. The first group are new applications that were approved. You'll see we have a handful of rain gardens along with conservation cover, which is also synonymous with native prairie, and one shoreline project. We switched funding for one, that was Kevin Extem, because we had EPA funds, and then we made about 6 payments on projects that were completed. A couple of conservation covers, a grade stabilization, cover crop, field board, and well decommission. And we changed the dates on 2 projects, basically postponing implementation or construction, I should say, to later in the year. So And with those, there's a couple of final fact sheets that are there for your review at your leisure. But with that, I'll stop and ask if there's any questions.
Any
I do
questions for Troy? Oh, go ahead.
Question. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, is there any questions for Troy?
I do have one. You mentioned, Troy, that your staff has about 30 to 50 service requests each. What's kind of an ideal target to kind of maximize service and quality of service? Because I can tell 50 and 30 are really high. What's the ideal you guys like to aim for?
So that's a very good question, and if I had to say a number, I'd say about 30 would be the optimum.
Okay.
But it really depends on the complexity of the ones you have. Like some staff are naturally, with their experience, going to have a more complex project suite, right? So it probably wouldn't handle 30 well if they were all complex projects. But if it was a good mix of some complex, some rather simple, then it's probably more realistic to handle. So at 50, what you're doing is you're basically responding to people who call you. You know, you're greasing the squeaky wheel, so to speak. It's not ideal from customer service perspective, as you can well imagine. But it's kind of the only way to get through it. In some respects, we're kind of a victim of our own success. We have so much interest in our programs and with our partnerships, you know, supporting that program and promoting it, that, you know, you have to keep delivering the service that sort of brought people to that level of interest. And so balancing that is really important. But I would say it's a long answer to your short question, which was how many? And I'd say about 30 is our goal.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for Troy?
Yes, Commissioner Weaver, this is Commissioner Pint. I have a quick question for Troy. As you know from my past questioning, I'm always very interested in our groundwater, both quantity and quality. I don't ask you to share any detail, but if you have any trends by any means, I really appreciate it if you could bring it to our attention early on so we could address it if there are an issue, both from a volume issue as well as potential increase in nitrates in our wells. Thank you.
Absolutely, Commissioner Pint. I think Melissa and WMO staff can provide more valuable information on the quality side of things. But as far as the volume, I think it would be good if maybe once a year at least we gave you a report showing you the trend lines for the groundwater levels. It's certainly easy to put together, and we can include it in our report.
That would be very much appreciated, Troy. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, if there are no other questions, we can move on to Vanessa.
Thank you, Commissioner Weaver. I have about 6 things I want to bring you just a little bit of an update on. The first I wanted to mention is our technical assistant and cost share program. As Troy mentioned, we've had a lot of interest in this program. It's very successful. At this point, we've selected the maximum amount of projects that we can fund this year. So assuming all of those projects get implemented, we can no longer allocate any more funds this year. So that's great news. It's also, you know, mid-July, so I think this is probably the first time the program's run out of funds this early in the year. Something to keep in mind. We do actually have more projects on the list than we can actually fund. But it is good news, and it's a good problem to have. So I wanted to bring that to you. The second thing I wanted to bring to you is the SWMO staff has been involved with a few meetings with the Lower Minnesota River South Watershed, which is it's basically LeSueur County, Rice County, Scott County, and then Dakota County, and it branches into a little bit of actually a little bit of Hennepin, a little bit of Ramsey County as well. to kind of talk about the One Watershed, One Plan planning process. So if you're outside of the Twin Cities metro area and you're not in one of those 7 counties, you're not required to have a watershed management plan. So the opportunities for planning and the opportunities for funding, specifically from the Board of Water and Soil Resources, is really through the One Watershed, One Plan planning process. I don't at this time have a really strong perspective on really what the SWMO's involvement should be, other than it's kind of important for us to have some level of involvement because it includes, again, the headwaters of Sand Creek. We certainly have an excellent partnership with LeSueur and Rice counties, so there's a lot of benefit in that. But it is a really intensive program and planning process that will include probably a commissioner and a board member. But as I get those further details, I will certainly be bringing them to you. So at this time, I just wanted to kind of give you an update that we've had a couple of meetings. It's looking more like the agencies that are interested in participating are probably more the Soil and Water Conservation District, the Lower Minnesota River Watershed, and possibly the SWMO, of course, in some respect. Prior Lake did not have an interest. It is optional for the metro watersheds and cities to participate, so they have that choice. So part of it will be driven by the boundary that Bowser agrees upon. That boundary hasn't been confirmed at this time. So I would suspect probably by the next meeting, I'll probably bring a couple of maps to you to kind of propose what our perspective might be. But it is a very intensive program and planning process, so just be prepared that one of you may be requested to participate if that's the direction we receive or choose to go. The second is the metro version of watershed-based funding, which is the Lower Minnesota, yes, I'm going to say the same thing again, Lower Minnesota River South Watershed-Based Implementation Funding. So this is kind of our primary clean water funds that we've used over the years, slightly different planning process than previously. Our convene group has been working on kind of their criteria and ranking for how we're going to fund projects for the next 2-year cycle. Last week, the group was able to kind of come up with those criteria for what we decided were 3 main buckets. A project bucket, which is probably going to be the bulk of the funds, an education program bucket, and then a studies bucket, because of course, trying to rank studies against education, education against projects is very difficult, so it's just easier to break them into buckets. Initially, Bowser had intended to allocate us somewhere around $830,000, but they have not been able to confirm at this time if that's what the group will receive. But our next step will probably be to kind of finalize the ranking sometime in September and kind of start to discuss what types of projects and programs. So probably in September, I'll come back to you then with a list of proposed projects from the SWMO to submit to that process. So that'll be our main watershed-based funding for the SWMO for the next 2-year cycle. And both of those actually feed a bit into, well, all 3 of those things, feed a bit into our budget. So right now, again, our budget is still a little bit up in the air. Our budget drivers right now are very heavily based on those grants and the direction from the county on where their comfort level is with the levy for next year. In the watershed management plan, the proposed levy that was approved is 3%. And so we will have to take that into consideration with also what the levy direction is from the board. And those combined with those larger grants, as well as the 9-element grant, are kind of going to drive our budget. But this year, I think probably more than previous years, there's a lot of up in the air when it comes to where our budget funding is going to fall and what will be available to us. The last two items are kind of smaller items I just wanted to bring to your attention. One of them are boat launches. So some of you are very aware that this year has been a really heavy toll on some of our boat launches, especially along Cedar and McMahon Lake. And while there's a lot of issues with traffic, probably a lot more people using those launches than ever before, understandably, because most folks are home and can't go anywhere, and so people are out more than they've probably ever been before, combined with a few issues with the actual quality of the accesses, and of course on McMahon, the high water. So Melissa especially has been doing an absolutely beautiful job helping to coordinate with the residents and the appropriate regulatory agencies. So while the watershed doesn't actually have any authority when it comes to the boat launches, our role to help coordinate and connect people is very important. So I just wanted to share that, and then of course if you still have issues with people, please, let us help you however we can. If it's a traffic issue, that goes to the sheriff, and then if it's an actual access issue with the access itself, that'll go to the DNR. And then many of the townships have more jurisdiction as far as regulating what's going on in that area, but we'll continue to happily coordinate, and again, Melissa's been doing a beautiful job of that. So we certainly empathize with the stress. It's again another one of those, the benefits of having such a wonderful resource. It's a good problem to have that a lot of people won't have. The last item I just wanted to mention, most of you remember Jim Strigler was our past board commissioner. They were going to do a presentation at one of the board meetings. They've chosen instead to do a certificate, and so we did as staff, primarily Ryan, thank you very much, wrote some lovely words up for him, and that'll be sent out to him with a certificate from the board. So that's how they're going to recognize past service members this year. So those were my staff updates for this month, and I stand for any questions.
Thanks, Vanessa. I have one clarifying question. If we do not participate in the One Watershed One Plan planning, we can still receive and use implementation funds. We just wouldn't be part of planning that plan, right?
That is a question we asked at the last meeting, but we didn't quite get confirmation. I believe that is correct, but I will have to double check it. So you're right, we don't get to have any say in that plan and how those funds are dedicated. I believe we do have some access to those funds, but I can't say for certain. We definitely would not have access to those funds if we were not in the planning area. So if they drew the boundary at the county line, then we would not have access to those. So the benefit, of course, in participating for us is that we could help access additional funds. But you kind of have to balance the cost worth time, worth the effort. Yep. So, yeah, that's an excellent clarification. Thank you, Commissioner Weaver.
But it sounds like the SWCD may still be in the planning, so hopefully the boundary would still include the county, right?
So that becomes one of those, if the SWCD and Lower Minnesota River are interested in the boundary, encompasses them, then by default, we kind of become included.
Yeah. Yep.
Can't really jump over us, even though we're kind of laying on top of each other.
Yes. Yep.
At least it's the best I'm able to understand it at the moment.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Are there other questions for Vanessa? I actually had another one too. I was curious if you know offhand how the technical assistance and cost share funding, does it vary a lot from year to year? I don't remember as we looked at our budgets, or is that pretty consistent?
It has, I'll try to actually probably speak to it a little bit better, and probably Ryan could as well, but in working with the budget, I've looked back, you know, we've tried to increase it a little bit each year, and I know Paul's intent was to try to increase the local funds, so we know we had a larger dedicated fund towards it, but we certainly had a significant bump with that Sand Creek grant, the $2 million grant.
Yep.
So we heavily supplement that program with grants, and so that's what's gonna cause a lot of the fluctuation.
Okay.
Much of the grants we go after are in fact just to keep that program going.
Okay.
So it's probably less levy dedicated funds that are fluctuating and grant funds that are fluctuating.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Oh, go ahead.
Jump in on that? Oh, sorry.
Vanessa, no, you hit it on the head. We keep pretty consistently over the years as far as the local general portion of it with slight increases to match inflation more or less. But yeah, the fluctuation does come from the grant. And depending how successful we are from one year to another and when they expire, that kind of dictates how the program goes.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? If not, I think we can move on to ongoing business. Vanessa, I believe you're up first there.
I am. So, Madam Chair, Commissioners, in 2018, so I'm going to move back to grants again. In 2018, the SWMO began participating in the 9-element plan process for the Sand Creek watershed to address impairments and achieve water quality goals through what basically ends up being a 16-year dedicated funding program. It's administered by the MPCA, but the funds actually come from the EPA. That plan was actually approved in February of 2020 by the EPA. There is a link to it in the packet. I tried to squish the whole plan in there, and we couldn't send it to you. It was too big. I apologize. So go ahead and read it at your leisure. It's lovely. More importantly, the application for the Phase 1, which is that first 4-year funding cycle, was due on July 17th. So we submitted an application for that Phase 1 funding cycle. So in order to be eligible for this first 4-year funding cycle, you must have an approved 9-elements plan, which we do, and you must be located in one of the targeted 9-elements watersheds. So one of those 10 is actually Sand Creek. Bottom line is 75% of the points, you basically have to have a plan and be in one of these. So it kind of eliminates the competition, which is what makes it a little bit more of a dedicated funding cycle. So there is a maximum of 10 $280,000 grants that will be awarded by the MPCA through EPA funds. And applicants will actually be notified of their awards by August 7th. Now, for the SWMO, the Phase 1 application actually focused on the Pika Creek and Cedar Creek, we call them management areas in the plan. So if you can flip, that's the application. Please, yeah, go through that quick. So this is the Pika Creek subcatchment or management area, focus area 1 that was identified in the plan. If you want to go to the next one. And that's the Cedar Creek priority subcatchment or management area 2 that was identified in the plan. And that was actually at the direction of the MPCA and directed in the plan that we would focus on these first. So we're simply implementing this plan now in our proposal. In addition to these 2 focus areas, I actually included management area 5. So if you go to the next map, please, which is circled there. It's Porter Creek, McMahon. It kind of helps target, again, more of that developing fringe area and headwaters area for this round, and helps us with more flexibility in our funding options. So you'll notice both the Pika Creek focus area and the Cedar Lake focus area are a bit small, and we wanted to make sure that we had the ability to target these, but also be flexible with our funding and maximize it in order to really implement this plan at this point. So, the SWMO did request the maximum grant funds of $280. And Ryan, if you could back up to the budget, please. There you go. Oh, that's very tiny. I apologize. The SWMO did apply a request for the maximum grant funds of $280,000. We're proposing a 45% match. 40% is required, but we're going to propose a little bit more. That's pretty typical of the SWMO. And that is a total implementation budget then of $505,600, to be spent over the next 4 years between 2020, it starts in 2020, December 1st, and goes through August of 2024. So you can read the application. A large chunk of this is also, again, dedicating funds towards what would be tax-type projects, because that's also consistent with our plan as well. So what staff is actually requesting is that the WPC make a recommendation to the board to support moving forward with phase 1 and the grant, should the SWMO be awarded a grant in the next couple weeks here in August. And I would stand for any questions.
The 45% match, if it's not a tax-type project, is that the landowner match? Where else would the match come from?
That's a good question, Commissioner Weaver. So the match is overall the grant match. So we broke it down as primarily SWMO making the match. We realize, of course, that the landowners and some of the tax projects will have a match as well, and reincorporated those into the application, but I didn't rely upon them too heavily to allow for that flexibility and to make sure we have the dedicated match funds. One thing I did not mention is that because these funds are EPA funds, they can be matched with state dollars. So you can use these EPA matched with Bowser funds. So that's the one very, very wonderful thing about this grant.
And you don't have to define that match up front. So if we got additional Bowser funds, you could use that as a match instead. Okay, nice.
Correct.
Other questions for Vanessa on this? Or do we have a motion to approve as suggested? Good way to put it.
Commissioner Pant, I would like to move to recommend approval at Commissioner document.
Do we have a second?
Yes, Commissioner Shea, I'll do a second on that.
I will do a roll call. Commissioner Weaver?
Aye.
Commissioner Shea?
Aye.
Commissioner Casilia?
Aye.
Commissioner Veerling?
Aye.
Commissioner Pitt?
Aye.
And Commissioner Schmidt?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, the motion is passed. I'm looking forward to hearing next month how we did. Next item, program updates, monitoring and maintenance. Ryan or Melissa?
Madam Chair, Melissa, do you want to go first?
Melissa, why don't you go first?
Sorry, I was trying to get off mute and get my video on so everyone can see me. Hi. Really quick, our CAMP program, which is our lake monitoring program with our 3 volunteers on Cedar, McManus, Ol, has been underway since June. I did complete 2 of the summer aquatic plant surveys on McMahon and Cedar. We attempted Thole in June, and for some reason, there was a lot of algae in the lake. We weren't able to complete it because, the algae plugged up the motor right away. So we will attempt that one more time, and I had scheduled a possible 2-week window for O'Dowd, which happened to turn out to be that 2-week window of all that 90-degree weather, and we just felt it was unsafe to be out there all day on O'Dowd, with face masks on, trying to do that survey all day. And then the watercraft inspections have been underway and seem to be going really well. I spoke with, waterfront restorations on that. Also, the DNR has started some inspections. The only lake that they're doing decon and inspections in Scott County that I know of right now is on Lower Pryor Lake. And that's all I have.
Madam
Any
Chair?
questions for Melissa? Okay. Ryan, do you have an update too?
Madam Chair, yes. Good evening, Commissioners. So, real briefly, we've been doing inspections on our CIPs.
If you are talking, we can't hear you.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, can you hear me now? Madam Chair, Commissioners?
Vanessa, do you know if Ryan had an update that we should wait on? If he's trying to work on audio issues?
I think he might be working on his own audio issues.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, can you hear me?
Oh, we can hear you.
All right, sorry, I have to toggle between the two screens, between sharing and then also the muting and unmuting. So, sorry about that, technical difficulty, but glad we could figure it out. So I do have just a brief update. 3 of our CIPs, we had some maintenance activities that we discussed at our May meeting. Since then, we have had our Public Works Department out to look at those sites, and they have expressed an interest in helping us repair them. So we've sort of laid out a timeline of when we will go forward with those projects. 2 of them will be in the fall when crops are out, because access is through a crop field. And then another one is a day-long project that they're hoping to fit in maybe in August or September. We've also been doing inspections just as a whole on our projects, and so far pretty good for the most part. A lot of our CIPs that we've constructed here recently look really good. One of them is one that we are looking to address some erosion this fall, which is one of the sites I previously mentioned. We'll continue looking at our riparian buffers. We did one site visit last week, and there is a buffer that does need some work. It had trouble getting started from the beginning. There was an herbicide application that was supposed to just knock back the reed canary grass that was in the area. It proved to be very potent, and it killed everything. And so, as you would expect, weeds kind of came in. Also, that herbicide killed most of the trees and shrubs that were planted in it. So, we plan on having maybe a conversation just with the consultant that did the work, and just kind of explaining the situation and see if we can't come to some sort of agreement on moving forward and replanting it. And then also we'll continue to perform inspections on our projects here moving forward. There's still probably a handful more of sites that we need to go out and look at. And so if there are things that need attention, I will bring those to our meeting for just sort of an update to everyone. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions for Ryan? Okay, I think we can move on to new business. A fall tour. Vanessa.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is something that most of you are familiar with, but is new for me. Each year, the SWMO and SWCD holds a joint tour for our commissioners and then other local leaders to view projects, really strengthen our partnership and hone and honor the residents that are leading our stewardship efforts. So 2020 has, of course, brought us some unique challenges with how we might carry on our annual activities. Most of them we tend to lean on the air of real caution and postpone the things that we feel we can postpone. However, staff really feels that this is actually an activity that we would like to bring to you to request your input, because we genuinely feel that it would be possible under our current county's COVID-19 operations plan to implement the annual tour. So the working topic for this year is wetlands and runoff reductions. Part of it is how restoring wetlands helps increase storage capacity, and also the impacts to some of our water resources like McMahon when we have a limited amount of that. So one of the stops would possibly be McMahon Lake, and another one of the stops would possibly be Helen Wetland Bank. It's kind of the working topic we have right now. So as I said, staff does believe that we can actually hold this tour safely, and we feel that there's a lot of value in holding this tour for our commissioners and our joint boards. So we would recommend holding the tour under the following conditions. The group is going to be small. We're going to keep it to approximately 20 participants. So we might not reach out to as many of the commissioners as we normally do. The entire tour will be held outdoors. So I haven't attended one before, but whatever portion was inside will not be inside this year. It will all be outdoors. There are different outdoor opportunity spaces at like the SWCD offices, for example. So we could certainly do that with a shelter or whatever. And then social distancing protocols will be followed. So everybody will be required to wear a mask and be wearing a mask, and then maintain a social distancing of 6 feet or follow the county guidelines for social distancing. So staff is supportive of this, but we would like to hear what your input is regarding the fall tour. So specifically, we'd really like to get your feedback on, are you interested in attending the tour this year? Maybe you've just done so much this year, you're just tuckered. You'd rather just postpone it. Maybe you're so tired of being inside your house that you love this and can't wait to go. What's your comfort level? This would typically be held during our September SWMO meeting too, so that's kind of the time frame we're looking at. I would like to know what your transportation preference and flexibility is. So, driving separately might be a first recommendation. Realizing then we would rotate people through 3 sites, break the whole group into 3 smaller groups, so one resident doesn't have 20 cars at their home. We would have maybe, 5 cars at a time. You'd rotate through all of those, and then we'd meet together at the end. Or, do you really feel like it's important for you to have a bus, with social distancing within the bus, and that's your comfort for going, or you're flexible? And then, of course, any other thoughts or concerns or suggestions regarding the fall tour. So with that, I leave it open for the commissioners to discuss and provide us some input.
So this is Commissioner Shea here. I'm fully supportive of it, whichever everyone wants to do. I mean, if we do decide to do it, bus or cars is fine with me. But I do think it's important to go see the site and, just, kind of do that. I like the way you already think about the social distancing and everything, but, I completely support it. If we can do some sort of thing to make that happen, I think it's a great idea.
This is Commissioner Casilius. I agree, it's also a great idea. I'm just wondering of sort of calendar dates, if you have them. My September's pretty full, so I just was kind of wondering what those specific dates might be.
It would be the 28th, right? Would be our normal meeting.
Thank you. Yes, so it'd be from 4 to 6 p.m.-ish, over the time of that Monday meeting. That's what we're looking at right now anyway. And it would be good to know that that's perhaps the only time you have available, if you still do.
Hey, Vanessa? Commissioner? We have changed in the past, on occasion, if the county commissioners who are invited and represent, and some of our state representatives or legislators, if there's something going on that night, we have switched it to like the Tuesday or the following week. As of now, we don't have that information, but the Soil and Water Board has looked at it already. They're open that day. So provided there's nothing already on the commissioners' calendars, the county, we likely keep it on that day.
Commissioner Bierling, I think it's a great idea as well. I'd like to continue the tour. As far as transportation, I would probably lean on the side of driving individual or leave that up to the individual if we want to do it that route. But otherwise, I think it's a great thing to go ahead and do again.
Commissioner Pence here, I'll echo the same. I think it's very valuable. I'm looking forward to it, and I definitely prefer driving my own vehicle to the sites. Thank you.
This is Commissioner Casilius. I'd prefer to drive myself as well.
Well, it sounds like we're pretty much in consensus. I think it's still a good idea to hold the tour, and I guess I don't have a transportation preference. I think the conditions that you laid out make sense. The only other thing, what we've typically been doing at work is saying we'll continue to revisit our conditions as things change because things are changing all the time. But, I mean, I think what you've laid out makes sense, and my guess is that we're still going to have those types of requirements in a couple months yet, so. Any other comments or thoughts from the commissioners?
And I do apologize, Madam Chair, Commissioners. I should have written this as a discussion item. I should have said action, because there's not actually an action that's required unless you would like to make one.
I don't know if we necessarily need to make an action unless somebody feels like we need to.
Somebody had a burning desire. You're welcome.
Yeah. How about last call for questions, comments, or the desire to make this an action item?
This is Commissioner Shea again. Say if we did go out to McMahon, what would be the plan, as far as meeting out here? I can volunteer my place to go on it as a meeting place. I've got plenty of room to keep everyone distance, or if you're planning on the boat launch, which I don't know if that's the best place, but just as a thought, if you wanted to incorporate that in, I'd offer that up if you'd like.
Oh, that is absolutely wonderful, Commissioner Shea. Thank you. We hadn't gotten that far, so that is wonderful to know, and we will definitely keep that in mind.
Okay.
Okay, I think we can probably move on to, item B, 2020 election volunteers.
All right, so Madam Chair, Commissioners, this is my, county. The county did recommend and request, not recommend, they did request, we reach out to our commissioners and our staff. You are probably aware, that if you're not, it's great news to know, the county is facing a significant challenge this year, getting election judges and volunteers. This is not unique to our county, this is statewide. It just in order to ensure the social distancing and sanitizing procedures, we're gonna need probably nearly twice the number of election judges and volunteers from a typical election year. Unfortunately, also, most of our returning judges are over 70-ish, and that's kind of the average age. So, you know, we understand that a lot of them aren't able to return this year. That's what we've heard. So we know we don't have as many election judges in the past, and we need twice as many. So we are asking commissioners to generally do 3 things, if you'd be willing. One, just, you know, promote, encourage absentee voting with your friends, your family, the neighbor, FedEx guy, people on social media you know, people on social media you don't know. The more people that absentee vote, the less pressure there is on in-person voting. It'll certainly be a lot shorter. It will be a lot easier. It is extremely secure. You can discuss it with some of our county staff with how secure it is. It is probably the easiest thing you can possibly do. It takes you a couple minutes to register online. I did it, and I was really surprised. So, second thing would be, if you are able, you know, please consider volunteering. There's a huge capacity for different types of volunteering opportunities, both before, during, and after, with both absentee and in-person elections. It's about a 1-hour video you have to watch, so it's a very easy time commitment if you're able. And the third thing is, you know, if you know people, anybody over the age of 16 will actually do. You don't even have to know them well or like them. But please forward them this information and just kind of get the word out there that we are really in need and would really appreciate additional election judges and volunteers. And then I added the information from the county on how you go about becoming an election judge, an election volunteer. And county staff her contact is actually at the end. Julie Hansen is a wonderful resource, and she would love to hear from you or people you know. So if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to Julie. And thank you for considering this. And I stand for any questions.
Any questions for Vanessa?
This is Pam Casilius. I just wanted to let you know I'm already an election judge, and I've already reached out to Julie, so we're off and running.
Thank you, Pam. That's wonderfully appreciated. I should mention, too, that even if you volunteer through the county, whether it's the county or any of your local cities or townships, it's all the same group right now that we're pushing for. So whether it's the county or the townships or the cities, it all makes a difference. So thank you.
Okay, hearing no other questions or comments, so we can move on to item C, minor plan amendment process.
Okay, so we are planning a plan amendment this year, and Vanessa thought it would be a good idea that I review what that procedure is. We do have that procedure all laid out in our watershed plan, but I did pretty much copy and paste it into the memo here. I don't know if anyone had a chance to read that. It's not really exciting reading either, but so it's the length of the plan amendment process is really going to depend on whether the amendment is considered a minor amendment or if it's considered more a significant change to the plan. If it's considered a minor amendment, it's pretty much just a 30-day process. If it's considered more significant change, then we have to go through the whole review process that we did for updating our plan, which would be a 60-day review, sending it out to all the state review agencies, counties, SWCDs, other watershed jurisdictions, Met Council. After that 60-day review period, we'd have to have a public hearing. And then shortly after that public hearing, we would take all those comments, responses, and then it would have to come back to the state review for another 90-day final review. So it's really going to depend on whether our changes that we want to make to the plan are minor or if they're considered more a significant change. We do have listed in here what we consider is a minor amendment. And that is on page 2 of that memo, and really those would be things that, you know, if we're renumbering pages or like a recodification of the plan, if we're just making like a clarification on a procedure or clarifying the intent of a policy, not changing the policy at all, that would be significant. Or if we change a goal, that would be considered significant. And then we would consider a change minor to our CIP program if the CIP was already in the original approved plan and we're just making a change to that. But it's my understanding that if we're going to be adding things to that table, that we might have to go through the significant change process. But I want to get clarification on that from Bowser. Now, we've done plan amendments many times. I believe it was in 2018 when we did a plan amendment. We sent it out, we thought it was minor, and Bowser came back and said, no, we don't consider this minor. So we kind of had a little setback on our timeline because it was for a CIP. And so we had to go through that 60, then 90-day process. So I think it would be a good idea to send Bowser an email ahead of time to say, here's what we're planning on doing. Would you agree that these are minor amendments, or do you consider this would be more of a significant change to the plan? So I think that would be a safe route to go. That way we kind of know more of what our timeline would be for approval. So with that, I can take any questions if anybody has any.
Any questions for Melissa? I'll just comment that I think that makes sense to run that by Bowser staff to be on the same page about what minor is, just so, you know, it doesn't come up. So I think it's a good idea. Okay. If there are no other questions or comments, I think we can move on to the grant application. And Melissa, it looks like you're up again.
Oh yeah, I forgot. So as you know, we've been trying to find a funding source for a permanent outlet for McMahon. We did submit the project in a bonding bill to the legislature, and we had Representative Albright and Senator Pratt on board to support that project. I received an update from Claire Roebling, our legislative liaison with Scott County, at this last special session on the 21st of this month. The House voted on the bonding bill. It was combined with a tax bill, and so it did not pass. The bonding bill did not pass. So she did recommend, Claire did recommend to the homeowners on McMahon Lake that we passed along this information to them. We had a Zoom meeting with them last week. That one thing the homeowners can do is to get a hold of Representative Albright, to vote for the bill in August because they will have to have another special session 30 days from the 21st if the governor keeps his emergency powers. If he, releases his emergency powers before then I'm not sure that they have to have a special session. But those homeowners, to get a hold of Representative Albright to vote for the bill in August, if they go back into session, and for him to also use his influence with the rest of his caucus so they don't link the bonding bill with the governor's powers again. So I think that was part of the issue, is that, I don't want to get into political parties, but the issue is that the tax bill that it was linked to, it was combined with the tax bill that the Republicans liked, but the House Republicans had pledged not to vote for it unless the governor gave up his emergency powers, and he didn't do that, so it was voted, the majority was no, and it didn't pass. And so if it does eventually pass the House, Senator Pratt in the Senate is willing to support it. So that funding is kind of on hold, or at least knowing if that funding is coming. So we did have another opportunity come up. Bowser has released their application period for the fiscal year 2021 Clean Water Fund competitive grant. And so as staff, we talked and we've decided to apply for that, and we have support from the McMahon landowners around the lake to apply for that funding as well. On the 20th of this month, we have a volunteer on the lake that it's the same volunteer that takes all of our water quality samples, but he also monitors the lake water level. And on the 20th, he read the gauge, and the water level is at an elevation of 967.41, which is 2.21 feet above the ordinary high water level. So this competitive grant there's about $12 million available. Obviously, it's a scoring process, so we would submit the application, and if we have to get scored to know if we would be granted the funds or not. There is a required match, it's 25%. The application deadline is August 17th. And I do have an RBA into the board going on the board meeting for August 4th. So our project cost for this is, we had put together a number of $469. Now that includes doing all the background work, which is an environmental assessment worksheet, getting easements, getting the design done. That's the construction of the outlet. That also includes $100,000 for to do shoreline restorations again, because several homeowners around the lake did restorations, and those are all underwater right now. It is unclear to me at the moment. I need to call Bowser to see if we can apply for those funds, the $100,000 or not, because I believe some of those projects that we already did, those shoreline restorations, we've already used state funds for. But I've asked Ryan if he could dig up that information for me. And then I want to call Bowser to see if we could even reapply for, $100,000 to redo those. So that would leave a match needed of $117,250. And right now we have $130,000 set aside. So we have the match for this. So the project, if we were awarded, the project wouldn't be able to start until we had a grant agreement fully executed, and then the grant would expire December 31st of 2023. With that, this is really an action item, so we're looking for a motion and a recommendation that we can continue on to the county board to get approval to actually apply for the grant. So with that, I'll take any questions if anybody has any.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I would just add the one piece, the reason why this is also an action item is because this wasn't in our normal, CIP plan to apply for a grant for this. So, whenever something isn't in our normal plan or work plan or approved budget, we'll ask for approval before moving forward with the grant application. As opposed to other grant applications we might pursue, that are in our approved plan or budget. So, if you're wondering which process we're following, that's why we're following this process this time.
Okay, thanks for that, information, Melissa, and the clarification, Vanessa. I have a question that's not necessarily related to the grant application, but, what elevation were we having to pump at last year? Are we close to that, this year? Are we that high again already? It's just.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think we started pumping last year when we were 2.6 feet above the OHW. I'd have to look back, but the highest I believe it got last year was 2.6 feet above the OHW.
We're already close to the.
Yeah.
Any questions for Melissa on this? Or do we have a motion to continue, or to have them continue to go to the county board to work on this application?
Yeah, this is Commissioner Shea. I would like to motion that we would, make a recommendation to continue to, go for this application, the grant.
Is there a second?
This is Commissioner Matt. Second that.
All right, Vanessa, do you want to do roll?
Yes, I'll even take myself off of mute. Sorry.
Okay, sorry.
I'm partway down the list and nobody's talking back to me and I can't figure out why. Tell you, it's getting late. Sorry about that. Commissioner Weaver.
Aye.
Commissioner Shea.
Aye.
Commissioner Casilius.
Aye.
Commissioner Vierling.
Aye.
Commissioner Pint.
Aye.
And Commissioner Schmidt.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, the motion is passed. Good luck. And item E, assignment of duties, Vanessa and Ryan.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, so Vanessa and I put the memo together, but I'll handle most of the speaking, and Vanessa can kind of interject as well. So the purpose of this agenda item is to discuss staff having the discretion to approve our cost share contracts. We understand that the WPC plays a vital role in this process. However, as evidenced by last month, we don't always have monthly meetings, and it could be due to a fluctuation in agenda items that if we don't have really enough material, we might not meet, or a whole list of things, and one of them, pandemics that we're in right now, potentially play a role in that as well. And so it's sort of, we're thinking ahead in terms of if we don't always have a monthly meeting, and we run into a situation where we have a screening committee recommendation item that needs to go to the WPC for that recommendation, and then further on to the WMO board afterwards. In those situations, wanted to get the WPC's take on or their feelings if staff were given the ability to approve those or have the discretion to approve those in absence of a monthly meeting. And as Vanessa indicated in the memo, we are required to have 6 meetings a year, which, obviously we'll meet that. But, typically in a year, we probably cancel 2 to maybe 3 meetings. Plus you also have the tour in September, which we don't have action items that go to that meeting as well. So, and that's an annual thing. So, it's almost like another month is taken out in terms of approving those applications. So, at this point, we just kind of want to see the feelings of the WPC, how they feel about this, and then go from there. And if we take it then to the WMO board after this. So with that, first I'll maybe see if Vanessa has anything else she wants to interject, and then we can open it up for questions.
So, thank you, Ryan, that was a great job. Madam Chair, Commissioners, I would just add, a lot of the driver for this is also, again, just kind of improving our efficiency and delivery of our services. Since a lot of these are time and seasonal dependent, the tax program gets a lot of review and approval from the WPC, which I feel is very appropriate. The WPC, reviews the tax docket, which is the operating procedures for the program and the eligibility for the program. The WPC also reviews and approves the annual budget for the tax cost share projects themselves and programs annually. So through that, I feel like the WPC provides a lot of rigorous review of this program already. So I feel like this is just one way to perhaps streamline the program a little bit, given the new era that we're in, but not reduce the review and oversight of it. So that's a large part of the direction as well, just to continue to really improving our service delivery while maximizing input and oversight.
Commissioner Weaver, this is Commissioner Pant. I'd like to make a comment. If you maybe weren't aware of this, but the Watershed Planning Commission has direct input in the tax docket in their annual review and changes every year. We have had the privilege of having 2 representatives at this meeting, joint meeting, in the past, and I'm sure we'll continue to do that in the future. So we have direct input in the docket already, and as long as the applicants are falling within the guidelines and the budget, I see really no reason to have it mandatory that the Watershed Planning Commission vote on those that are of a certain size. So I feel very comfortable with staffs moving forward with this.
Okay, that's actually a good point. I do want to clarify that this is only for applications that meet the qualifications of the docket and fit within the budget approved by the WPCN board. So yeah, if there's anything outside of that, it would not be at discretion. So I apologize for not making that clear. And thank you, Commissioner Penn, for reminding me.
I'll just add, I'm fine with giving you guys the discretion for this, especially considering I think there's only been one time we haven't agreed with staff since I've started here, and that was to approve something that staff suggested not to approve. So, and it was pretty minimal, but I had a couple clarification questions. Does this mean we would only be going to meetings every other month?
No, Madam Chair, this does not mean we would only have 6 meetings. It was just a kind of a way to explain kind of what the situation is now more these days, kind of what life is like. But no, there is not necessarily an intentional plan at reducing commission meetings. There is certainly some higher level conversation at maybe the board level to kind of improve efficiencies and reduce unnecessary meetings. But probably probably, unless directed or necessary, that's not necessarily first on our list. So that's not driving this. It's more that, just with the way things are, we just don't have as many meetings every year, and we have some months where we don't have them. And for those months where we don't have them, we just want to make sure we can keep moving the program forward. And we'd also still bring those projects to the WPC at the next meeting, so it's not like they would never hear of them. They don't just appear.
Yep. And then the other clarification, it seems like in most instances this would come up if there was a rush and it needed to be, a decision needed to be made before the next meeting. Am I missing something that we would not have other things wait for the next meeting? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think the plan is just to keep the process moving as consistently and smoothly as possible. I don't think we would hold projects back to the next meeting if the staff could just approve them, given the normal things. That would kind of be the perspective that we're going for, is to kind of keep things consistent for our applicants and our residents and our landowners. And also, yes, for those especially that are very time sensitive, this definitely prevents them from going in when they need to.
Okay.
Yeah,
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, Commissioner Shea, I'm just, one question I have, and I completely agree with Commissioner Pint on, I believe it's a smart idea to do that. I just was, my only curiosity would be, say, if we did, or if the staff did approve something, along these lines, where it was just, for timely that they would do that, would that be something that maybe would be brought up in the next meeting that we would have, just as far as an update, or just say, okay, yeah, we voted to do this, or, we decided to put this into, implement this?
Absolutely.
Fine. Okay, that's all, that's the only question I have. I think it's totally fine.
Any other questions or comments, or is there a motion to approve, how do we want to word this? A motion to approve the discretion of staff on these types of projects?
This is Commissioner Pint. Just clarification. It's not appropriate for us to move. It's appropriate for us to recommend to the WMO approval of this change process.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification.
And hearing no other one, then I'll be happy to make the motion to recommend to the WMO to make the changes as laid out here in the document today.
Do we have a second?
This is Commissioner Casilius. I'll second it.
All right. I am not muted, so I will do a roll. Commissioner Weaver.
Aye.
Commissioner Shea.
Aye.
Commissioner Casilius.
Aye.
Commissioner Veerling.
Aye.
Commissioner Pint.
Aye.
And Commissioner Schmidt.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, item F, Water Resources Conference 2020.
Madam Chair, and Commissioners, it's Ryan again. So this is just an informational item. We submitted a joint application with one of our partners, Interfluve, which, if you remember, we've used them for most of our recent stream bank CIP projects. So jointly we submitted an abstract to the University of Minnesota, who puts on the Minnesota Water Resources Conference, and lucky for us, the application was accepted. So WMO staff will be partnering with Interfluve to present at this conference, and it's scheduled to be from October 20th to the 21st. One thing with this year that is different than in years past is the conference will be all virtual. We don't know exactly what that means yet, whether it's live presentations or whether they're pre-recorded and then anybody who pays to go to the conference has access to them. One thing we thought is it's possible, and it kind of touches on what Troy was saying earlier, that they're seeing their webinars having a lot of success. And we're hoping that this is some positive exposure for both Interfluve and the county on work that we've done. We find these projects pretty neat. And so we can kind of share in our experiences of going through that process. So the presentation would be on those recent, our most recent Logjam CIP. You know, I think there'll also be some broader, you know, going over the other projects we've done as well. And at least from our conversations, I think my role in it will be more talking about the landowner side. You know, how do we navigate those conversations? How do we do the marketing for the program? You know, obtaining our easements and working through all of those nuance items. So, and then also I was just going to share with you, you can find information about the conference online. You can go to just any search engine, and if you typed in Minnesota Water Resources Conference, it'll bring you to this page. It doesn't have all the updated information on it, but they will be updating it here probably later this summer or early fall. It'll have the abstracts that they submitted, and then eventually they'll come out with you know, an agenda and some more details of formatting. At least from what we saw in terms of the costs for presenters to pay the fees, they're significantly reduced from last year. So if you remember, we actually presented at last year's conference as well. There was a group of us, and it was, you know, talking about the Sand Creek efforts as a whole. So, you know, Paul and then Commissioner Weckman-Brecky sort of were the moderators for it, and then we had, you know, Melissa, representative from the DNR, representative from Interfluve, representative from MPCA and Bowser. So we had a whole list of panelists, and so it's a good opportunity here for us to continue to have kind of exposure on all the work that we're doing here in Scott County, and hopefully people find it interesting, and maybe with it being virtual, it'll be fairly well attended. And too, I think it helps if you know, the presenter's cost is less, so maybe presumably the attendees' cost would be less. One would think, especially since there's no meals or anything else associated with it. So all those factors might actually work in our favor. And so it's just an informational item, but I'll stand for any questions if anybody has any.
I'd just like to say congratulations on getting the abstract submitted. For those that don't know, the Water Resources Conference is a pretty prestigious conference in the water resources world, and it sometimes can be hard to get an abstract picked for a presentation, so that's great.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Ryan? Okay, hearing none, do we have a motion to adjourn?
This is Commissioner Shea, I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
And do we have a second?
Commissioner Beerling, I'll second that.
And I will do a roll. Commissioner Weaver.
Aye.
Commissioner Shea.
Aye.
Commissioner Casilius.
Aye.
Commissioner Beerling.
Aye.
Commissioner Pint.
Aye.
And Commissioner Schmidt.
Aye.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody next month.
Thank you, guys.